For every city you burn, I'm gonna build one high.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi. It is mute. No, it isn't. Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I'm Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and this is December 19th, YC126. And this is the Eve Universe Show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a lot to go to today. However, the Christmas intro, I think, is a little bit shorter than my normal intro, and my coffee took a little bit longer to make than normal. So I will be back in like two shakes of a tail. Hold on. All right. Y'all get your tail shaking done? How's it going, folks? We have a whole year of content to get into today. Don't talk to me if I've had... This is technically my second cup of coffee this morning. So, you know, there's that. But still, like I said, we've got a lot to cover today. So I've got my coffee in my Mauro mug. Double credit if you got one of those. Or the invited mug. Or the Convocation of Empyreans mug that isn't on my desk at the moment. Tail was shooketh. Great. Hi, puppy. All right. So, what are we going to do today? Well, it's the end of the year. We're getting towards the end of the year. And a lot of people like to do like year in reviews or whatever. And I thought that that would be a cool thing to do this year. And maybe kind of evaluate holistically how this year has gone for EVE Online. Because it's often easy to because we're always dealing with like what's happening right now. You know, it's easy to think that nothing's happening. So let's look at the entire year to see what happened, right? That's the plan. I've got a whole bunch of the news articles, basically all the news articles that I thought would be relevant in chronological order, ready to go. But first, how you guys doing? I've had a tiring couple of days. My pets like to wake me up in the middle of the night. All right. Also, I do want to point out, like, it's been kind of a hard year, more or less, for everybody. And I saw on the news that, like, overall, the desire to do, like, Christmas traditions has kind of died out this year. People are kind of over traditions for various reasons. And I'm sad to say that I can confirm this is true in New Eden. Something I didn't even think about right at first. But if we go into the New Eden store, we see that there aren't any special skins going on right now, which is kind of wild. Let me introduce you to... I should have gotten this ship for you guys, but let's see if I can actually do it this way. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go get it. So there's a skin that's available for a bunch of the ships that is available every year in December, except for this year, apparently, called the Yule Star. And it's kind of hard to see because of the bright lighting. Oh. But along the spine of the Yule Star skin, there's these two bars. Let me find a better version of it. Algos? Yeah. So we can see that there's this... It's going down the thing, although that's also wrong. Well, you can see how the first few are lit and the last 6 are not. It's because this counts down to Christmas Day, with the 25th lighting up on Christmas, or the last one lighting up on Christmas Day, and then this big star appears in the front. And well, the skin's already available. They just didn't put them up for sale this year. Last time they released my yearly statistics in video format, but YouTube, it's given 2 of those videos of mine copyright strikes. That terrifies me. But yeah, so I've got my ugly Christmas sweater, but I'd completely forgotten about it because they weren't selling it, and Christmas really snuck up on me. I don't know about you guys. Also, I don't think CCP had layoffs this year. CCP has pretty much been a hiring company for the last couple of years. I mean, like, some people have quit, but I don't think we've had any layoffs that I remember. All right. Either way, let's jump into it. So the year began kind of off of the momentum of the end of last year, right? In November, we saw Havoc and Vanguard show up for the first time, right? So we got the insurgencies and all that sort of stuff. So we were in the middle of Vanguard and Havoc at that time. I did skip a lot of the Vanguard news because basically there was just a play test every month until June, or the solstice one. But so we were just getting to know these kinds of mechanics. Obviously, there has been some fixes overall. I'd say that compared to faction warfare, the insurgencies themselves have not been nearly as successful. We've talked about the reasons why before. I think that the biggest reason why is because the lack of interesting rewards, especially for the counter-terrorists, as it were. And there's other tweaks too. But overall, I think it boils down to rewards. The fact that the fighting is concentrated to a few systems is pretty cool. The fact that you can't get your stuff back to Zarzak kind of sucks. And there's other challenges too. It's been pretty fun overall. There's been a lot of, like, multi-boxing and botting has been a problem with faction warfare for a long time. But thanks to the extreme rewards in the pirate side of the insurgencies, including like the pirate titans and such, that really, in my opinion, really pumped up the bad behavior when it comes to AWOXing and multi-boxing and all sorts of stuff. And they have done some steps to do it, but it is a problem that continues to plague the feature for sure. Yeah. So that's where we started. Okay. Now, at the very beginning of the year, they gave us a director's letter, and that we can compare the year to what they said was going to happen. Okay. So they showed off what they did last year. Nasty, we should whack a bot. Yes. Well, except for the bots are all in like algoses and stuff, so it's not even fulfilling to do that. So this year was a focus on strong wait, hold on. Yeah, sorry. They talked about their product themes. So this is their overall product themes: strong organization, the future of war, identity, and agency. Okay. Strong organizations come from giving players like ways to organize themselves or things to do. So this involves like the Air Career Program, opportunities, and corporate tools and projects. The future of war is, of course, well, like everything from the frontline changeover in faction warfare to other combat changes, etc., in order to shake things up. Identity and agency is more about like creativity and expression. Like, for instance, previously we had the emblems that you can buy for Evermarks to put on your ship for your corporation and alliance logos. So here they had as their plans, they had Vanguard playtest and Havoc. They really didn't sell us on much this year, did they? Right? Like, and I remember making this point back then too. You know, we have all these things for the year before. But then when we get to this year, there's like less than half of the stuff total. So we have Capsuleer Day, we've got the Alliance Tournament, we've got Winter and Summer Expansion, Vanguard Playtest, Crimson Harvest, and Winter Nexus. They gave us almost no clues compared to this one, where we have things like Shadow War, Direct Enlistment, New Year's Celebration, Excel, Epiphany, which we didn't know what it was at that point. You know, so there's a couple more here than there was the year before. I should get back into CalMill at some point so I can get those Galente encryption chips to produce Caldari propaganda structures. Yeah, apparently they made that a lot easier to do too. Like, there was no continuation of the Intaki stuff all year. I agree. There was a lot of stuff that went quiet, for sure. All right. So, with the lead up to the summer expansion, a new era will begin to unfold for New Eden, details of which will be start to revealed. So, they're talking about Equinox, right? What we can say is exciting new technology and resources will give the players opportunity to build and customize their space in nullsec, creating new conflict drivers and objectives. Bold and lucrative opportunities will arise for established corporations and alliances, but also for small opportunists that can attack vulnerable areas to gain resources. One thing is for certain, the value of owning and defending space is set to rise. And, you know, I think that one of the things that we're going to be looking at here, man, this is going to be, it's going to feel like a really negative episode, at least at some of the times. But, you know, it is true that if I tried to argue that Equinox wasn't that bad of an expansion, I think that a lot of people would probably like come at me with pitchforks, right? Overall, the Equinox expansion was supposed to make nullsec happy, and to be frank, that was a bit of a disaster. Now, they've kind of cleaned it up by now, and we'll look at how that happened throughout the year, but this idea, especially this idea of like the balance between creating new lucrative opportunities for established corporations as well as small opportunists that can attack vulnerable areas. I think that those two things over time became seen as being kind of incompatible, or at least the more of one you like, they're in conflict with one another, right? And in the end, CCP has more or less erred on the side of the established corporations and alliances at the expense of small level opportunists. And we'll look at examples of that as we go. I'll get started on these encryption chips. Yeah. All right. 07 to you. This year, we will see a big leap forward in personal expression and identity with the introduction of Skinner for the Viridian expansion. Okay, so Skinner was already in the game, but it was in wait. Oh, no. Skinner, that was Skinner for structure. So that's right. Equinox was Skinner for ships, which again, that was another one of those really, like, when it first came out, it wasn't ready for prime time. But I'd say that by now, it's actually in a really good spot, personally, the Skinner tools. The expansion, and then home is where the corp is. Limitless possibilities. The concept of home holds a special place. Your home is the essence of belonging, corporation, and collective achievement within the corporations that form the backbone of EVE Universe. Corporation projects introduced in Viridian have played a crucial role in strengthening the bond between organizations and their members. At the helm are the corporation leaders and project managers, the visionaries and strategists who become architects for experience, and will continue to expand the reward types in 2024, which we did see. In 2024, we'll expand the scope and impact of corporation projects with exciting improvements such as enabling corporations to create freelance tasks for non-members. We didn't get that. Which will become essential avenues for recruitment. and great ways for caps leaders to build their confidence or simply earn some ISK. There will also be new methods to contribute to corporation projects, and the project conditions will be expanded to allow different methods of task completion. That is done. We do have new corporation projects, and there has been some pretty good iteration to making those opportunities like valuable to leaders and comprehensible to members. Overall more functional. But we still are definitely missing that whole able to make freelance tasks that are used for recruitment. Like that's not a thing yet. We stand at the cusp of a thrilling new venture with the introduction of eVanguard. Our commitment to openly develop eVanguard continues throughout 2024 and a monthly playtest as part of the Founder Access for Omega playtesters. These are a crucial and collaborative process. We can see that there's a roadmap here that ended on June. And these are all of the playtests that we got until October. And that's when we got the Solstice update, was June. We'll get there. From the depths of null security space to the front lines of planetary combat, every update and expansion was crafted with you in mind. Our roadmap is merely the beginning. We have stellar events coming this year, including Capsuleer Day, Crimson Harvest, Winter Nexus, and the biggest Alliance tournament yet. So there's a lot to be excited about. One thing that is noticeably missing this year, and we'll look at the events that did happen, is like when they cut back on doing the annual events, like the hunt and all that stuff. They started focusing on more like time-sensitive one-off events, like Shadow War, right? That forward the plot and all that sort of stuff. And while they did do those this year, what we'll see is that the scope of those events were much, much smaller, both in their duration and accessibility, right? The Shadow War lasted for what feels like months and covered high sec, low sec, etc. Some of these were mostly in highly dangerous areas that few people were able to do. And also were really short. Events were really, like these extra events were super short in a lot of ways. So there you go. That is what we're looking forward to the year. So in the 23rd of January, we did get our new starter packs. They do these starter packs every once in a while. The weird thing about, or the nice thing about it is when they do these, you can actually rebuy them again. But, so this is where we got the starter packs that you can now get today. They came from January. I should have looked up the last time we did those. They did new ones to kind of get an idea as to when they might do it again. But I didn't do that, so just wanted to bring this up. Then, the next month, they came out with new starter packs. So these are the in-game purchases, right? Hold on. Maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong? Hold on. Packs. Yeah, never mind. Those are cash pack. So yeah, they added the starter pack to go along with the other packs. Before that, in January 24th, so the end of January, that's when we first started to hear about the Eve War for New Eden board game. A Kickstarter that was successful. You can go and still like invest in one, I'm pretty sure, if you want to. You can give a late pledge to get some. They are... I'm sorry, it's $130. That seems like a lot. But, I mean, board games are expensive nowadays. It did get funded by quite a bit. So, this is going to happen. And I do know some people that have played this at, like, an event or something. And they said it was quite fun. But, of course, we don't have it yet, right? I think did I buy one of these? I can't even remember if I got one. I think I did. I'm pretty sure I did. I'm going to have to look into it. Then, in February, we also got the new launcher. I don't even remember what was so good. Oh yeah, there was the old launcher. This was such a like a, a complicated thing too, because like the Steam version still used the old launcher, and there was a period of time where you could use both, but then the old launcher was deprecated, and the new launcher doesn't have some of the functionality that the old launcher did. But they've also improved the old launcher or the new launcher quite a bit. I still think that some of the personalized settings stuff is harder to do now. But this was a big piece of a lot of the stuff to come, you know, like building up the flexibility to do Vanguard and other sign-in authentication, security. So it was necessary, but it did take some adjustment. Then late February, we got the update that allows for LP trading. So for the first time ever, you can actually give your loyalty points to your corporation. And this is a really big deal because this is also when they made it so that corporations can make purchases on their, like, as a corporation leader side, right? Right? I'm right, right? I'm now having some madness here. Oh no, never mind. Yeah, okay. Yeah. LP donations were paused during Havoc, and now they've been opened back up again. That's what it was. Because people were afraid. So CCP was afraid that with Havoc, people would pool their LP by using the donation system in order to get access to the Azrael and stuff faster. In practice, that choice to shut off LP trading did absolutely nothing for anybody, because those people that wanted to pool their resources just set their LP tax to like 100%, and now they're all pooling it into the corporation, right? Same effect. So eventually they re-enabled it, but it is a good way. I still think that this is a really good change, I guess, from the year before, that was connected to allowing, like, one of the biggest problems with faction warfare back in the day was that all of the revenue is private, but the costs are public, are collective, right? Like, you want your corporation to provide you ship replacement, hauling services, etc., but there's nothing taxable in faction warfare for the corporation, right? So the introduction of LP taxing makes the individual problem of turning LP into ISK into a collective problem that the entire the corporation leadership can figure it out. And I think this was really, really good. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But overall, I think this was an incredibly positive change. Even though this did allow people to like pool their LP together for the Azrael and stuff, I think that was a small price to pay for this fix. Now, a corporation can offer just a certain amount of ISK per LP to the player base and take a certain cut of your LP. That's what we did in the Invited for a long time to get people started. And it works out pretty well as long as you had somebody who's willing to turn that LP into value, right? But rather than each individual person having to solve that problem of what to do with their LP, now you're pooling your LP so that way you can create one big solution for what to do with your LP. And then also there was a bunch of changes done to the Navy ships, continuing to balance those out. Marauders. This is the Marauder first nerf of the year. A minor reduction in warp speed, a change designed to subtly affect their battlefield mobility. Command ships. Range increased by 50%. And then entropic, I didn't remember this. Entropic disintegrators were changed so that they started with a lower initial damage, but ramped up more per cycle. I forgot that that even happened. And they did continue to improve the Excel add-on. I haven't used the Excel add-on. Let me know what you guys think. But then expert systems and accelerators came to the NES in January, March. We get the various expert systems at our disposal. The one that I do want to highlight here, since we're talking about it. Excellent, excellent. Okay, great. There is one expert system that I think is definitely worth most people's consideration. Not most people, but like that is worth consideration. Which is is it the Industrialist? Hold on. Yeah, I think it is the Industrialist, right? Can't you wait? Oh, no, here we go. Gas harvesting expert system and mining barge expert system. This is actually super clever, okay? Just in case you weren't aware of this. So this expert system is kind of cool. Alpha clones cannot use mining barges. So rather than pay, so like somebody gets into the game, they get their venture, they want to mine, they want to step up to the next level. Now they've got two problems at their disposal. Well, three problems at their disposal. One, they don't have the skills for the next level. Two, they don't have the stuff for the next level. And three, they don't have Omega, which is required to be able to use those skills and the stuff. In comes this expert system. So for 15 plex, you can use mining barges and strip miners for 7 days, regardless of your alpha status. So if you're just getting into the game and you want to like take that next step, but you don't necessarily want to get 500 plex for Omega and all that other stuff, you know, that maybe your alliance is doing a moon mine or something like that, you just want to come and participate in something better than your venture, 15 plex will allow you to mine in a mining barge for 7 days, which you should be able to, if you really try, you almost certainly can make 15 plex worth of ISK of additional value from mining in a mining barge, as long as you know, aren't silly and mine next to Jita or something and you get ganked. Okay, so that is actually pretty cool. Some of these expert systems are really good, but in particular, I think the mining barge expert system is a big value add to the game. Not even new players. There's a lot of players that are like, go AFK from the game. I hear this all the time, where it's like, oh yeah, you know, I was going to go get back into Eve, but like I'm on alpha status now. Well, this makes that barrier to entry to getting enough to be able to be mining with your buddies at least. That's a low bar to cross. The rest of these I'm not really convinced are that worth it, personally. But then, because they like selling us stuff, we also got new career packs, which were associated with the different career paths. That's the ones I was looking at earlier. That includes the expert system plus some additional stuff. That's up to you. Are these is this the Cerebral Accelerator that used to give a bonus to it? Was this the one that gave the bonus to stats? Or is it? No. Nope. This is just the attributes one. Next. For April Fool's Day, we got the nerf. The nerf was a bunch of additional tools that were added to the launcher, Omega Pro Max. And they're pretty cool. Some of these were like website type stuff. Some of these things, like some of my the biggest favorite was Rebel Radio, right? Which was basically the old jukebox back. And people were really excited about this. I also was like, why would you go through all of this effort to make this tool for an April Fool's Day joke? Like, it has actual functionality to it, right? And so there's a lot of like, what gives, man? Why is this got to be an April Fool's Day joke? We want the jukebox back. Well, nope, that's a different one. Shoot. Hold on a second. I just realized yeah. All right. Well, at risk of giving people information, I mean, whatever. Hold on. Do I have? No, I don't. Of course I don't. Hold on. Properties. Okay. So here's my Eve launcher with all my accounts and everything. But if you hit Control F, that brings up the find function. And then if you have it already used, you can go to unlock features, but otherwise you can just type in Rebel Radio, right? Isn't that it? No? Shit. There were special commands. Is that not it? What is the command? Okay, hold on. I'll go look real quick. Where is it? There's something. Hold on. Now I feel like I got to do this. Because I can't just show you guys that it's possible and then not give you what it takes to get it. It isn't jukebox. Oh, here it is. I found it. Found it. It's below the asteroids. So if you hit Control F and then type in below the asteroids, is that not going to work? Oh, hold on. Colon below the asteroids. Got it. So if you hit Control F on your launcher and then type in colon below the asteroids, you can unlock Rebel Radio for your client. Right? And then likewise, if you do colon Eve is beautiful, all one word, that's when you get Instalock, which is their Instagram. You can do Fedo, colon Fedo for Red Knot, which is their all of the Chronicles. And then you've got Oz, which oddly doesn't lead you to the Oz's YouTube channel, but instead turns your client upside down because it's the Australia mode. So yeah, little fun things about the launcher that you may not have even known that they did, but they did, and it's still there in the game now. And then once you do that, once you unlock those, you can actually just open it up and reopen Rebel Radio or whatever. Then in wait. Shortly thereafter, on the next day, we got Play Science app beta test coming soon. The adventure continues with the upcoming beta test of Play Science, a mobile companion app designed to bring the challenges and reward of project discovery to your fingertips. Did this ever happen? Wait, did this ever happen? I don't think this happened. What happened to this? Well, they never tweeted. Well, all right. Play Science app is an Android, iOS citizen science mobile app that grew out of our collaboration with CCP Games and Gearbox Software Borderlands Science and our ambition to become the most populous, accessible platform in exchange with Games for Good Lab. What happened to this? Wait, hold on. I forgot. I literally forgot all about this. I'm just checking to make sure it's not on the Play Store, and like we just didn't notice this whole time. Just in case. Just in case. Play Science. Absolutely not. I just get a bunch of kids stuff. ABC Mouse, playing, learn science. Nope. Not even a little bit. Science Channel, go. No, this thing planned to be launched in 2024. We haven't heard anything about this. Whoopsie. I think they just... I wonder what happened to this. It's still a few days to go. That's right. They will come off their winter break just to announce it. So, then in April, after April Fool's Day, we start to see the very fledgling pieces of what would become the winter solstice, or not solstice, but the equinox event. See, solstice, equinox. See how I'm confused? Anyway, so before we knew about equinox, before we knew about skyhooks, before we knew about any of this, our first clues of something was going on was that Upwell Consortium started messing around in the high-sec system of Avoiken. And this was the first of their live events that was going on at the time. They started building a structure there. This was the very, very beginning pieces of what would eventually become the Skyhook. And while that was going on, there were special drops in Rogue Drone sites that could then be turned in Avoiken for like tractor beam, like special consortium tractor beams and stuff like that. Now, this was technically doable by anybody, which is kind of nice. There wasn't like special sites or anything like that. And that's kind of a thing that was like a theme this year, was that there's a lot of like special drops in otherwise normal sites that were used in these events. So in this case, pretty much anywhere that you could kill rogue drones, you could get the drone graviton emitters and then turn those in for stuff. Each Upwell reward crate can be obtained in a Avoiken 6 facility by handing in 1 drone graviton emitter, 10 drone cerebral fragments, 60 drone capillary fluids, 40 drone tactical limbs, and 100 drone synapse relay wiring. So then that comes with loyalty tokens and BPCs for the faction blueprints. So you couldn't just pick one, but you get a box that would probably have one in it. Okay. And again, this was only open for a short period of time. It was like a couple weeks or something like that this was available. And then those consortium items have never been available again. We can see it's where's the browser? There it is. So here, the consortium capital tractor beam, consortium small tractor beam, I think also the consortium Vortron tuning system. I could be wrong about that one. And the consortium mobile tractor unit. I do know that, so the tractor beams and the tractor units were all part of that thing. I don't remember if the other consortium items were part of that, but it's worth noting that, like, these items, which are technically improvements over their basic form, they are faction blueprints. They have better stats. See, the consortium is faster than a tractor beam, and has a further optimal range than a normal tractor beam, which of course things like the Noctis will magnify that even more. But this event, that short-lasting event, was the only time that those could be gotten. That's right. Vortron and stuff are the rare drops from turning in stuff from insurgency sites. That's correct. Or insurgency packs, I should say, the named packs. But so these consortium tractor beams can only be gotten during this event. So all of them that exist in the world was gotten during this window of time. They have yet to hint that they're coming back. And that's not the first time or the last time that we've seen that kind of thing. Bought 350 million and sold them for 1 billion? Yeah. Well, we all thought that they were going to be folded into the next thing, and then they never were. So then Capsuleer Day begins on the 30th of April. Capsuleer Day is, of course, to celebrate EVE Online's birthday. So what they did was they actually brought back the Doctor Who event with the special sites that were in the Doctor Who event, the hacking and the combat sites that were for 2 T1 cruisers. They replaced, obviously, all the Daleks and stuff with drifters and trig. But while this was it was a lot of fun. The Doctor Who event was fantastic. As much as people want to gripe about the crossover event of Doctor Who and EVE, the actual event itself was incredibly popular, and people had a lot of fun with those escalating challenges all the way up to tier 5 or tier 6, I think it was, for the combat sites. Or no, I guess it's tier 4? Whatever. Either way, you had to find the stuff to build the keys, and then use the keys to go in to find more stuff. And you had to so you had to run tier 1 in order to get stuff to build tier 2, and then tier 3, and there's hacking and there's combat. It's all very, very cool. The problem was in the Doctor Who event, there was special items like the bow tie suit that was only available if you made it to the very tippy top of the combat sites, right? And that gave a reason for people to want to do those high-level combat sites, because these things were worth infinite ISK. I mean, there was a lot of people that really, really wanted them because they're trolly as hell, and you could only get them by doing the top tier of the combat sites or maybe you might be able to rarely get it in the hacking site during the Doctor Who event, but it's mostly from just the top tier combat site, which is very, very hard. And this works because that's worth so much money. The people that can farm that top tier were willing to spend a lot of money to get those keys, because they didn't want to have to keep farming the lower tiers in order to get the stuff to keep building keys for the higher tier. So they're paying money so the people that that are running the lower tiers can sell their doodads to them in order to let them help build their higher keys. And that trickles back and trickles back and trickles back, which gives the whole system inherent value, right? But with this event, with this version of the event, they didn't really put anything at the top that wasn't just normal rewards. So they were valuable. They were still pretty valuable, but they weren't infinitely valuable in the same way as they were before with the bow tie. And I say infinitely valuable because now the longer you wait, the more valuable it's going to become, right? In essence, when this event ended, I can't even tell you what the top prize was because there really wasn't one. Like, you could just get lots and lots of money worth of stuff in there. But there never really emerged a good purpose for people to want to run those highest level challenges versus grinding like a tier 2 or tier 3 challenge. And so I think that it didn't do quite as good as the Doctor Who version of it, which was a shame because, like, in mechanically speaking, these sites are incredibly fun. They just need to be valuable enough to, because it takes a lot of effort. You're asking a lot out of somebody. And this is one of the things I really liked about this event was that it's a journey, right? With most of these events, it's like, okay, log in, get the correct ship, find the site, run the site. That's it. Rinse and repeat for the rest of time. But with this, there was a progress. You couldn't just jump straight into the highest tier stuff, no matter what. You could buy the ship or whatever. Didn't matter. You know, if you'd have to go find exploration stuff to build the T1 keys, then do that to build the T2 keys, T3 keys, T4 keys. It was a journey. And like, I remember during the Doctor Who event, it was on day 2. It was the first time that I could remember that I really, really felt compelled to keep doing an event for its own sake, right? I remember I was going to bed on the second day of the Doctor Who event, and I suddenly realized that I was pretty sure that no one had gotten to tier 5 yet, or tier 4, whatever, tier 4 or 5, whatever it was yet, which means nobody had had the chance of getting it. There was no bow ties yet. The race was still on, and that caused me to get out of bed and go back to the game and play it for another hour or two, because there was like this reason to do it. There's this journey to go on and you want to get out ahead of other people, right? We never really, really saw that in the Capsuleer Day event because there was no higher objective to aspire to. There's no trophy at the end of that prize. Anywho, whatever. I talked about it then too. Equinox expansion notes. January, February, March, April, May, June. So now we're in June, right? Yeah. We get oh yeah, okay. So sorry, this is Equinox expansion. So this is the coming of skyhooks, sovereignty transitions, Metanox moon drills, upwell haulers, a bunch of balance changes, improved air daily goals, and ship skinner. Okay, and some new home front operations. So the nullsec changes took a lot of work. I mean, this whole power workforce reagents thing, it's kind of working out. I know that there's been a lot of back and forth between CCP and the player base. It was very obvious to me that CCP had kind of this vision of like a really complicated topology where not every system can support things. So you had to figure out which systems supported things and then not waste power there. So you want to extract things like personnel from another place and route it over here so that there's like this complex network of design as you lay out, you know, you plan out your empire and kind of where things are going to be. That's what they're hoping for. But the player base throughout this entire process, the player base would only associate it with the old way. And it seemed to me like it didn't matter what new advantages were being added if other pieces of it were made worse, right? So it didn't matter that you could now mine Isogen and Nullsec for the first time in 5 years if only half of the systems in New Eden were even having enough power to put a mining array on it, right? This fun puzzle of figuring out which systems can has enough power for stuff ended up being largely rejected by the player base. And so they compensated for that and raised the power supply of all the different suns, like the lower end suns, to make it so that every system can at least power a Sinojammer or a mining rig, although not both, and some other changes like that. So like from the get-go, that fun puzzle was also very hidden for most players. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that player base, like, I'm not saying, oh, it's the kids that were wrong, you know. I'm just saying, like, it was clear that CCP had this idea in mind, but they failed to get the player base to understand where they're going with it. Now, I don't know if it was because they didn't have enough tools to visualize it, or because they didn't control the narrative enough, or if it was just an honest-to-God bad idea. But the point of the matter is that the player base largely rejected the system before even trying it out. But I still can't mine and build my own dread, so everything sucks. Yeah, and it didn't help that there was a lot of problems that compounded on each other, right? There were some issues that were big and probably demanded addressing, and there are some issues that probably could have been HTFU'd, as it were, but because they were all together in one thing, and because CCP really wanted nullsec to be happy with this update, they ended up compromising a lot to give nullsec what they want. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. This was the nullsec expansion, right? This was the expansion to make nullsec happy. And nullsec walked away from it madder than they were before. So in that metric, it failed. So they had to do something. But, you know, just like with the skyhooks, right? Like, so they add in these skyhooks with all new resources, which is just objectively more ISK for people, right? Like, there weren't skyhooks any before. Skyhooks don't take any fuel. Skyhooks generate value on their own, especially lava planets and ice planets, because they generate a commodity that is both sold on the market for people to power their Metanoxes, Sinojammers, and Sino stuff, but also could just be sold as a commodity. Not PI. This is not just PI stuff. This was on top of PI stuff, right? The reagents, the superionic ice and magmatic gas. This was new stuff that just gets generated for free in a skyhook that's hooked up to a lava or an ice planet. So they just got a new revenue stream, right? But with that revenue stream was vulnerable to people attacking it. So while CCP saw it as like, hey, look, guys, we're giving you a new thing to get money from, but you also have to defend it. And most people just saw that second half and was like, hey, more importantly, this isn't just a matter of like, in their defense, this isn't like, I don't want to have to defend my stuff. Wah, wah, wah. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, what the argument actually is like, hey, you know what isn't fun? Being pinged every 15 minutes because some asshole is doing something somewhere in your area, right? Like, the idea was that, like, I don't think anybody said that they didn't want to have to defend them at all. But the fact that these became, like, the go-to place, combine that with ESS, it just means that nullsec has become increasingly a go out there and do something boring and monotonous until people attack you or your infrastructure, and then deal with that. And it's just putting out fires over and over again. Oh, this ESS is being hit. Oh, this skyhook is being hit. Oh, this... And, like, here's the frustrating thing, right? CCP... Here's something to think about with all this, right? All of the resources were needed to fuel old things that previously didn't cost a thing, so no free extra revenue. Metanoxes didn't exist before. Metanoxes were a totally new thing. But my point is that it is new value, because to the person who's got the skyhook, it's now valuable to you. It's a new revenue stream. It's a passive income, which was something. It was the first significant passive income in the game since moon mining was taken away. So you've got or passive moon mining. You've got Metanoxes, which literally return passive moon mining, and you have skyhooks that fill the gap of passive moon mining as a strategic level monetary asset, right? So The point is that this is the cursed problem when it comes to nullsec, okay? Nullsec complains about stagnation. Nullsec complains that CCP does not give them enough content drivers. Here's the thing, okay? Here's my challenge to any of you in nullsec. If you're unhappy with the decisions that CCP made in Equinox, you need to take responsibility for your own motivations, right? That's the whole point. That's the thing about nullsec. You wanted your own player-built empire with player-built stories and player-built stuff without CCP messing with it, and CCP gave it to you. And what did you do? You turtled up and did nothing, and then bitched about it for years. You want there to be dynamic combat? You're the content creators. Be the content you want to see in the world. It is not up for CCP to make conflict drivers. Here's the problem with this, okay? CCP cannot cause PvP. By definition, the only thing that CCP can do is create PvE. I can prove this because CCP is the E in PvE. By definition, anything that CCP adds as a thing to do in the game is PvE. The whole point of PvP, like conflict drivers, is to create a PvE thing that people want to fight over, right? But in essence, all they're doing is putting in a PvE thing that people want to do, and then watch to see if people fight over the access to that, right? For example, the events that we've been seeing and how they're in dangerous areas that are highly contested and like very narrow focused. Like CCP cannot make, like, you wanted conflict drivers, so then they put in a bunch of stuff to give you guys conflict. People come in and mess with your stuff so that you can fight with them. That was the point. But here's the thing. People don't actually want that. People want to be safe in their home so they can get their shit done. People don't want to have to put up with bullshit. They want to be efficient, right? They want to be able to go to other places for conflict drivers, right? So the issue is that this is one of those things, like player base has largely turned to CCP and demanded that they fixed a problem that CCP cannot by themselves fix. If you guys don't decide to go to war with each other for your own goddamn reason, then anything that CCP does to get you guys to go to war is going to feel artificial and arguably painful, because the only thing that CCP can do is put obstacles in your way. I don't agree that it's not their responsibility, but at the same time, the decisions they make that generates any struggle for resources is shut down by players. What I'm saying is that, like, it's not only not their responsibility, it's not their capability, right? Like, if player empires fight wars for their personal reasons, CCP can't give you a personal reason. CCP doesn't give you a manifesto. CCP, like, with the same group of people complain about things like the opportunity system and, you know, new PvE sites or whatever, but then complain about stagnation or, you know, whatever. We don't want drifters to attack, but we want conflict drivers, whatever. Like, the point is that at a certain point, the only thing that CCP can do is put in things like skyhooks, give us things to fight over. The fact that you don't want to fight over them just exposes the real problem here, right? Which is that getting beat up sucks and beating up other people's fun. That's it. This is a psychological problem, which makes a cursed design problem. And that's what they're struggling with this year. This is why they did absolutely everything else they could possibly do in the game before touching nullsec, because this was like a known problem. Yeah. Okay. Whew. So, that said, all that said, Equinox failed to do this in a lot of subtle ways, and a lot of the compromises that they did got rid of the stuff that they were hoping were going to be drivers and stuff. But in the end, what we've ended up doing is, speaking the true, yeah, what we ended up with was a happy and content nullsec liver. You know, like the nullsecers are happier now, but a lot of the things that were put in to help spur more excitement into their gameplay were tweaked to be less exciting. And so now all that was left is a bunch of logistical bullshit that they put in for hauling things around to make your empire work. So they left all the busy work, but left out all of it took out all of the conflict drivers because people ended up not liking them. This goes back to like, this is the fundamental problem of the get to do versus have to do, right? We experience this a lot when it comes to like moon mining, right? We'll get like 3 moons, and then a bunch of people will come in and get it, and then we'll mine out the moon in like 4 hours or something like that. And everybody's like, man, we should get more moons. And then we get like 1 more moon, and it just so happens that like at that same time, 1 or 2 of our big miners decide to move on to something else or play a different video game for a little while. And then suddenly we have moons that aren't being finished, right? And instantly like that. In fact, you don't even need to add another moon. It's just like what player base, how much of your player base is focusing on that at any given time. There's an invisible line, and suddenly it goes from people get to do moon mining. You're offering a thing for people to be able to do that's a positive for them. To now there are people that are feeling that they have to do moon mining because they have to finish it, right? They've got to clean it up. Oh my God, these rocks aren't going to mine themselves. And you get people to burn out, right? So that line of get to do versus have to do is invisible and it's moving. And it's a psychological switch that flips in somebody's head. And the problem is that somebody on one side, generally speaking, doesn't comprehend the other side, right? When there isn't enough rocks, you're like, oh my God, we need more rocks. This is so great. And like literally the next week, you could be there for like 6 hours and be like, oh my God, why won't these rocks die? You know? So keep that in mind when it comes to things like skyhooks and hauling and mining and moon mining and defending your space and SOV umbrellas and all these kinds of things. Is that when some people complain about wanting to do it and some people complain about having to do it, it's because of that psychological difference. It can be the same exact activity, but if the conditions around that activity frame it in such a way that people get to do it, it's a limited thing that people barely get to do, versus a thing that have to do, you know? Eating a bowl of ice cream tastes really good, especially when you're hungry. Have you ever gotten halfway through a bowl of ice cream and realized that you're full, but you don't want to stop eating the ice cream? Have you ever gotten to your like last bit of ice cream and you're just like dreading getting that spoon in your mouth because your stomach is just like, oh, right? Like, that's it. That's the difference. You put it back in the freezer. That would be the sensible thing to do. So, yeah. Combat is like ice cream. You want a little bit, but too much. Or actually, combat is like Peeps. 1 or 2 tastes great. Past that, starts to get old. All right. In addition to this, we got... By the way, I have yet to ever see a sovereignty hub that has things turned on. Like, I've seen them have like, I assume that they have things turned on, but like, this clip with different pieces on, does this do anything? Space is a freezer, by the way. I just watched a thing that was talking about like misconceptions about space, and space isn't actually cold per se, because like cold is the experience of something taking thermal energy away from you. If you're in direct line of the sight of the sun, space is actually quite warm. We did get a new corporation window, which was pretty cool. And some new sites. A big problem that people had was that they needed to tweak some sites in order to make things happen. The mining sites was a struggle. Actually or figuratively. Well, like, so in order for heat to dissipate, there needs to be a medium for it to dissipate on. Like, you know, because heat is just kinetic energy of individual atoms, right? So the way that heat dissipates is like the atoms here hit the atoms of the air outside and give a little bit of the energy to that, and the air takes that energy away, and that's how heat dissipates. There is no other atoms to dissipate into from your skin, but if you're in direct line of sight with the sun, its radiation is hitting you directly with no atmosphere between you and it, so it scorches you. So if you're outside of the line of the sun, then yes, there's no heat energy. It can be cold. But with the sun hitting you, it's actually really hot. That's okay. You're right. You can, theoretically speaking, radiate heat without it hitting other atoms. But it's not as much, and it's not nearly as much as the sun. Yeah, you're right. I'm not saying that you won't lose heat if you're not being hit by the sun, but a big aspect of how things get cold isn't happening. You still have stuff leaving the body and radiating out, which takes heat with it. Well, outer space, never mind. That's a whole topic. We'll look into that. Okay. Metanox moon drills brought back passive moon mining. That has significantly changed the way the economics have worked. It's significantly weakened high-sec moon mining and made a lot of moon materials more available because people are more willing to defend a Metanox moon drill than they are to mine those moons in, shy of R64. And the new upwell haulers. I will say this. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say the new upwell haulers, I think, is probably the biggest success of this year. These, like the upwell haulers, are fantastic. Not only are they interesting new ways to haul, like I run around in my squall instead of a caracal, you know, like the across the board, the upwell haulers have been very successful. And I would also like to point out that the fears about like the avalanche taking over everything has absolutely not come to pass. I've definitely seen avalanches get ganked, and I've definitely seen plenty of people not using avalanches. So this whole idea that avalanches are going to be the end all be all of freighter, or like the death to freighter ganking, nah, didn't happen. Overall, I think that the upwell haulers were a fantastic addition to the game, possibly the best out of the year. But let me know if you disagree. And then, of course, carriers got micro jump drives, which was kind of a surprise gift to Equinox, and it's probably one of the least talked about. Let me know, guys, if you guys have ever used a carrier conduit jump. Did you, or seen one used? Is this even done for anything? I don't know. I don't know if we've just haven't gotten too deep into it. I think carriers already are so out of place in combat that adding this functionality didn't okay, so who's we in that case, Tom? I'd be interested to hear more about like whether or not these get used, because I haven't heard very much about it, but also I don't hear very much about capital use in general. In it. Oh, yeah, okay. That's cool. Well, good. Big boys are actually using them. That's good. And then, of course, new faction light and support fighters were added. And they doubled the Doomsday weapon damage. They fixed, or they updated auto targeting missiles. That's right. They added they were put in the new faction auto targeting missiles, or well, they changed the faction auto targeting missiles and made them available again. And this is when they made the change where, so one of the problems with Havoc was originally the idea was that insurgencies would spawn into the back lines of faction warfare, because the idea was that if an insurgency is won by the pirates, that system goes vulnerable if the faction that opposes them are capitalize on it correctly. They could quickly flip that system, right? Backline systems usually don't get plexed up much because they offer very, very little reward to plex, so they usually remain fairly close to stable. So the fact that a system that was otherwise completely off your radar suddenly goes vulnerable, suddenly is now owned by the enemy, could create this crazy front line which shakes up the situation. In practice, this never happened. The first few times, like, it would go vulnerable and immediately get plexed down. I think there was once or twice that it did manage to flip a system, but then it was immediately plexed back down. And what it really did was it made it even less interesting for the anti-pirates to defend themselves, because they had to split their effort between the insurgency and the front line. And to a faction warfare pilot, if it's like, okay, well, you can prevent bubbles and prevent this one system from going vulnerable if you fight here for several days, or you can actually fight for the actual territory control, fight over the front line that everybody's been fighting over for the last, like, 2 years. Obviously, people are going to focus on the front line primarily, right? Like, they get the same reward for both, so might as well do the thing that's for the activity that you signed up for, that actually helps your team win, instead of just prevents these pirates from doing stuff, especially since a lot of the faction warfare pilots like the bubbles. So they weren't even necessarily opposed to corruption. So what CCP did here was they moved the FOBs from the back lines to the front lines, which means now FOBs are directly interrupting the fight that is going on already. And this has caused a lot more attention and a lot more activity and a lot more disruption from insurgencies. This was a really good change overall. And they changed the planets. Skinner. They introduced Skinner. It was very bare bones at this point. At this point, though, like now, at the end of the year, if you haven't checked it out in a while, I'd recommend checking it out. They've done a lot of improvements to Skinner to make it look really cool. Yes, it still does take, like, it takes Plex or whatever, but just remember, the thing that they're replacing, quote-unquote replacing, is the Nest store, right? So if you open this up, guess what? Turns out, skins take Plex. Holy shit, look at this. Plex for skins, right? And so, like, the idea that these things wouldn't take Plex is completely out of the picture, because if you think about it from a business standpoint, this is part of their revenue. And the Skinner system directly competes with their revenue. So by telling them that they should charge less Plex for custom skins is asking them to shoot themselves in their economic foot. I just don't think that that's a good idea, right? I think it's just a good expectation to assume that it's going to be Plex. Now, there is a thing where there are more efficient ways to build things in Skinner and less efficient ways to build things in Skinner, for sure. And I'm not sure how much people actually spend the time to narrow that down. But the Skinner system overall has opened up a world of possibilities for people. And I think it's been really cool overall, even though there hasn't been an incredible amount of uptake, at least if you look at just like the Paragon hub. Like right now, there's only 2 endurance skins total. No, wait, hold on. Never mind, there's more. I was wrong. Maybe it is starting to come around. There was a while where there'd be like ships without any skins at all. So, you know, it's starting to get cleaned up. Oh, shoot. Yeah. Eva's ice cream. Yes. Space is hot plasma. Eve is ice cream. Are you saying that Eve doesn't belong in space? I'm not sure if I agree with that one. Anywho, yeah, the Skinner system has become pretty successful. Overall, definitely still more things I'd like to improve. At this point, the thing I'd like to see the most is like Evermarks were supposed to be used to create extra things for your ship, like decals or like your logos. I want to see more particle effects added to this whole thing. You know, we were promised even like special structure particle effects and stuff that could be gotten with Evermarks, like clouds and stuff around your structure. Not a peep of any of that. So I can only hope that they're still doing that. It is one of the weird things about this was that like Evermarks was supposed to be for customization, but then Skinner doesn't use Evermarks. It uses Plex and these other doodads instead. It does feel like someone from corporate made some pretty hard decisions that people couldn't argue with about how Skinner was going to work. But they did fold back in Evermarks with the fact that you can now trade between corp mates and individuals, and instead of paying the fee, which has now gone down, it was 30%, but now I think you can get it down into as low as like 10%. Instead of paying that fee, you just pay some Evermarks. I only refer to the enjoyment factor of Eve. Forget the previous stuff. I want my dating sim minigame in Eve. Well, there is a Divinity Social. Maybe they'll have a bigger thing. I want to see more stuff done with Evermarks because I'm tired of people thinking that Evermarks are useless. And buying your tasks completed with Evermarks ain't it. I was promised more than just decals or logos. Skinner. Corporate projects. They did add a lot more corporate project stuff. The biggest one would be they've really created a fairly robust ship replacement program, or at least ship insurance program, I should say. But overall, we've been really, really liking the way the corporation projects work. The Earn LP one was how we managed to do an LP buyback program, like I was talking about earlier, like an automated LP buyback program. The salvage wreck one is kind of mid. I'm not sure if anybody's ever like. I mean, we've dabbled with the salvage wreck one, but it's like, why would a corporation ever want to encourage? Like, what is the corporation's value for having the players go and do? Like, all these things are ways of pointing players into something that the corporation wants them to do. I don't really care if anybody salvages, but whatever. If you want the salvage material, you can just put a collection one for that. You don't need to reward the actual salvaging process. Okay. Improve daily goals. Man, oh man. So late last year, they changed the way that goals worked, right? So this was actually probably one of the more controversial things that they did this year, at least to me. Because they tried to sell this to people as like something good. It's the official tracking mechanism. Yeah, but like, is anybody... There's no reason to want to track salvaging except for just to do it, right? Like, all of those other things are things that, like, we want them to do. I mean, yeah, okay, nobody is a bad word. Absolutely. Somebody's going to want to do it. But I just, of all of the different projects, that's like the redheaded stepchild to me. That's the one that's like, were you really necessary? I sincerely believe that they were just working on the salvaging stuff for other reasons. And so They got it because they wanted it for the opportunities window. Salvage Corp's giving rewards, Will, but like, why would you want to reward the act of salvaging and not the turning in of the salvaged material? That's my question. Like, cool. I just gave away a lot of my ISK to get people to salvage, and now I get the warm, fuzzy feeling inside knowing that people salvaged. To keep record of the salvage split. I don't know, man. I'm sure. Sure. Yep. I'm sure there's a use case for it. Yeah, I do like the idea of it being used as a statistics and a tracking tool. That could be cool. But I also have never been like, oh, let's do a contest for who can salvage the most this month. I don't know. I think that honestly, so the other problem is that like the relationship between salvagers and non-salvagers are usually, as far as my experience what has been, is that you have a mission runner or a ratter that just wants to kill shit. And it's not worth their time to slow down to go and salvage it. So they just leave wrecks on the field. So then they team up with like another person who has a salvager, and it's basically usually 9 times out of 10, it's like, oh, well, yeah, just keep what you salvage, right? And that's like the reward. So I don't see why I would put like an extra thing to be like, hey, go salvage, because they already get the reward, the salvage. I don't know, whatever. I could be wrong. Anywho, so these daily goals, God, what a pain in the ass. So it used to be that you could log in every day and you get a goal reward. Well, I've done other videos breaking down the login rewards and its history and all that stuff. I'm not going to go the full history of rewards for things in EVE Online. But suffice to say, I think it's 2019 that the Evergreen Rewards track was put in. And it offered permanent skins, permanent these cool Halcyon boosters, and skill points. And it replaced the older system that offered short run blueprints, temporary skins, and skill points. Well, in December, they improved the system. So now instead of a login reward, it's a daily challenge reward, right? So we can see here in opportunities, we have these different tasks and we have this track here. So after 3 days, you get 4,500 Evermarks if you're an Omega. After 6 days, you get a Skinner pack, 2 Skinner packs, a skin component and the doodads to build skins. And after 9 days, you get 5 Plex, which has always been kind of hilarious to me, and 8 million ISK. And then on 12 days, you get the 225,000 skill points. You also get 500,000 ISK and 500 Evermarks per task completed, right? And the problem that immediately emerged was that it was very possible for there to be no tasks that you could complete, especially if you like lived in drone lands, for example, because it'd be like, all right, well, scan X number of data sites. There are no data sites, right? Is it that there's no data sites or no relic sites? I can't remember with drone lands, but like earn LP. There is no LP, whatever. So it could be difficult to actually complete the objectives. So they fixed it so that way their initial fix for this was to double the number of tasks and to make it so that they could double up. So with 8 tasks, chances are there is at least something that you could do every day. That was kind of how they dealt with that initial complaint. What this meant was that in the end, a lot of people would just log in, see if there was 2 tasks for build something, and then build 1 piece of ammo, and then log out, and then usually get far enough in the track throughout the month, right? recently, they fixed it again. So now there are 4 tasks. They cannot duplicate, but they're of different categories. So hopefully there's at least something here for you. And we'll see this later, but you can now also pay 2,500 Evermarks to complete something. Now you get 500 Evermarks for completing it. So really you're only paying 2,000 Evermarks for the first one, 4,000 Evermarks, I think, for the second one. But you can complete your tasks with Evermarks if it's on a day that there's nothing there and you still want to complete one. So every 5 days, basically every 4 to 5 days, you get to be able to complete a task for free. My go-to is fleeting up with my alts for LP. Yeah, that's a really good one. So yeah, that was put in. And they changed the in-game cards. There has been a lot of changes to the UI when it comes to ships. First with the ships in the hangar, and then later the ship info panel was changed. But the ships in the hangar one, I think, was really cool, especially since now you can hover over it and see the ships fit without having to worry about it. That's really sweet. You can multi-box and salvage your own stuff. You can do that. Or you can help a new bro out and make a friend by letting them salvage your stuff. Make friends, people. Alts do not replace friends. And then there was more rebalancing to the home front sites, as well as new home front sites that were added in. So now there's the 5-man home front sites and the 3-man home front sites. Those have been pretty successful. I actually haven't heard very much about people complaining about them being farmed by bots anymore, or not, like multi-boxers. It's probably still true, but every time I've gone to go do home fronts, we've had a lot of fun with it. That's messed up. You can. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying make some friends. Don't just solve your problem by playing with yourself. That's masturbation. All right. Masturbation is a sin. Don't be sinful. All right. So there has been a lot of fixes to observatory flashpoints this year as well. That's it. That was Equinox. Overall, Equinox was a bit of a mixed bag. The big highlights had a lot of problems, but I'd say that most of the features that came out with Equinox have gotten worked out by now. It took them pretty much the entire expansion to get it to a good place, but I'd say that now a lot of these things, the Skinner, the Sovereignty, whatever, like, they're in a much better place than they were originally, and I think that they're kind of in a tolerable spot by now. Wish I could find a crew for running incursions because I hate Sancha. Are they done with the lore part of the expansion? They're never done with the lore part. At the same time as Equinox, we also got Vanguard, or the Solstice update for Vanguard. This was a huge update for Vanguard. We got a new map. And changed the way that weapons worked. And it was a true iteration where now you customize your weapon with things that you pick up and build, or pick up throughout the sites with special tasks. It was a significant update from the previous ones that we were seeing for every month prior to that. But then it went dark after that, right? Like, we got no other Vanguard between then and October. Then, so then it was on the 20th. Let's see. Like Revenant still being told story-wise? Or it's definitely still going on. I wouldn't expect anything to happen for the rest of the year because CCP is pretty much out of the office, but I would not be surprised if something happened in January. We are on the calm before the storm. So this was the 7th. So then by the 20th, we see I think this is just I think this, yeah. They on the 20th they introduced the Paragon Hub. So you weren't able to actually trade or sell skins for the first like 2 weeks. There are at least a couple persons in the office at all times for server reasons. That doesn't mean they're going to fucking do a live event. Like I've talked to CCP before, they've straight up said that the reason why they do the winter event, or the reason why the winter event is so long and why they try to make it in such a way that people really enjoy it is because they like to put it on and then go on vacation. They also updated the transition to the sovereignty system. They pushed it out. And this is like when they start updating things about like the power grid or the power needs and stuff. And this is when the new home front, like the 3-man home front sites were added. July 6th, we see Carbon starts to take center stage. Now, Carbon has been a thing that's been going on since 2010, 2011. It was the engine that was supposed to tie Eve and Dust together originally. In fact, there's a whole API that was made that was called Crest, Carbon Rest. But we hadn't actually heard of Carbon for a long time. Like ever since the conversion from Crest to ESI, I pretty much hadn't heard of Carbon. I thought it was gone. But we found out that no, actually, it is not just gone. It is expanded. And there's something about they basically retooled the engine and it's now called the Carbon engine. And they've done some tests involving all this. This is really important because Carbon also is a major power of their new Eve Frontiers. And they have made strides to open source it. They really want this to be a tool for the games industry as a whole, not just for themselves. So it's a very ambitious thing, and it kind of goes back to their original dream with Dust, where they were trying to create a game engine that competed with Unreal. It's not quite that, but they've been bringing back that Carbon concept to new graphics and new API, like new backend services. Or rather, that's how they manage the backend services. So then July, we get a check-in with the developers. Ongoing rejuvenation of nullsec. They're kind of just going on about how this is going on. Remember, people were kind of not really happy with it at this point, but this is mostly just kind of showing off where they've been to kind of get people excited about what happened with Equinox. As a summary. But here they show that, look, there's nothing going to happen with Vanguard really until November, which is what happened. And yeah, I mean, like we said earlier, there isn't as many stuff on here, so it wasn't hard for them to knock it out. And we actually don't get any real vision of where we were going to go from here. So you can definitely see why people were pretty angsty during this time. People were not overly happy with what we got, and CCP seemed to just try to convince people that what they got was good, as opposed to fix it. Better that you don't know. I'm not sure what that was to. All right. Then on the 11th of July, right? 3 days later, we get new Skinner stuff, which was just... This was a relatively minor update, right? Yeah. So this was a relatively minor update, just tweaking things and fixing some of the bugs and other stuff like that. Later on, they would add a second pattern and some more functionality and stuff. But this was like the first step in that. Oh, this came earlier. Why is this out of order? This is the update that changed the power, right? Yeah, I think so. And people had... Oh, never mind. I think this is way before. This is old stuff. Equinox update. Why are these out of order? So then, at the end of July, the beginning of Project Discovery Phase 4 began. And this is one of those ones that, like, I was really surprised by this because, like, Phase 1 to Phase 2 was a big deal. Like, it went from proteins in a cell to exoplanets. And then Phase 2 to Phase 3 was a big deal. We went from exoplanets to the COVID-19 stuff. But Phase 3 to Phase 4, like, it was the exact same activity. It's just that they offered different rewards. Overall, Project Discovery didn't actually change. I think they just put in some new content or whatever. So it was kind of like, I always thought this was a really weird transition of Project Discovery from 3 to 4, especially looking back now and seeing that, like, there was that plan to come out with the app, right? So in April, they said that there's a beta test coming soon, but by July, they roll out Phase 4, which seemed like a very half-assed rollout to me, right? If anything, they just kind of changed it over to change it to being Skinner design elements instead of skins. So I wonder if these two things are related. I wonder if, Project Discovery changed. Most people didn't even realize that there was a Phase 4 that happened because of how little it changed. But I wonder if this is a sign, like, this is the result of this earlier thing falling through, right? It kind of feels that way because I thought they were going to make Phase 4 be associated with the app because that's what they said originally. But then we got Phase 4, but no app. I wonder if something happened to that. Huh. All right. August 15th. Skinner Enhanced. This is when, so originally you had to own a design element in order to use it. This was actually terrible because CCP was selling design elements for cash, sight unseen. You could not preview the Skinner component prior to buying it and applying it on your account. And they wanted you to pay real life cash. And I pointed out that this was a big concern, and thankfully they fixed it. First by posting pictures of it, at least in the dev blogs where they're selling the stuff, but then eventually by doing this and allowing us to preview stuff that you don't have. It also allowed us to share skin setups. Then comes the next bit of lore with the deep flow rifts. This is when fishing came to Eve. The idea was this is a continuation of the Capsuleer Day stuff. Capsuleer Day stuff hinted at this growing conflict between the Triglavians and the Drifters. The deep flow rifts was the next stage of that. The idea was that there was these massive battlefields that were being, like, ripped apart through space-time, and then being, basically the contents of it was being spit up through the wormhole. that was the original abyssal, like the rifts from the Capsuleer Day event. And then in this case, there were like rifts that you could literally use a tractor beam on to make cans appear. So it was like fishing. You'd find a little fishing hole and you tractor beam on it and scoop up the cans. It was a kind of a cool little event. This was a good one because anybody could take part in it. However, it was very short-lived, right? It only lasted like a week or two or less. It was more like a precursor to the next thing that happened, even though it was kind of a cool activity in and of itself. If you over-farmed it, then rats would spawn, rogue drones would spawn. Pretty cool. Then that's the skin share thing. So then by 9/9, so 8. Oh, so here we go. 8/27 was challenged to deep flow rifts, right? And then 9/9 was Zarzak is under siege. And so that's basic. Yeah, the deep flow rifts will be closing soon. And so basically the deep flow rifts, which were this kind of neat little unique sort of content for people, lasted like 20 days at most. I did enjoy fishing with the tractor beams. I do too. And then this was even more hardcore. So now there's special sites, or at least then, there were special sites that were spawning in the 4 systems adjacent to Zarzak. Now, this also happened when they introduced the new lockout to Zarzak, which made it so that if you go into Zarzak, you're now locked into that gate. You can only leave out that gate. You can't leave out any of the other 3 gates for the next 6 hours. And of course, this was something I railed against quite a bit. And famously during the CSM campaign, I talked to Frozen Fallout and he changed my mind. And I now think that this was pretty much a good change. But one thing this was good for is this event. It was very, very interesting because there were 4 different systems, right, that were in play. There's 2 nullsec systems and the 2 lowsec systems. The sites only spawned in those systems, and they were next to Zarzak. And they required groups of 8 to 10 pretty good cruisers and battleships in order to do. So, like, not the kind of fleet that you necessarily want to expose to low-sec or null-sec, but you have to in order to do these sites. But also, like, in order to get the best prizes out of these sites, there were special cans that spawned, and you had to put a special key in it. And there was one key that could be randomly gotten from any of them. But then there was a key that mostly dropped in low-sec, or almost exclusively dropped in low-sec, and there was a key that almost exclusively dropped in null-sec, which meant if you wanted to get all 3 opportunities throughout the site in order to maximize your chance of getting the new Drifter Officer mods that were dropping, you had to do some sort of trade, right? You can't just go to the null-sec area, do it for a little bit, and then move to the to the low-sec area because there's a 6-hour lockout. But somebody can do the null-sec area and then come back into Zarzak and put their extra keys up for sale. And then somebody can buy those keys and then take it to the low-sec area and run it there. And then sell their keys to the person doing the null-sec area. So it naturally, even though these 4 systems were 2 jumps away from each other, because of the Zarzak lockout, there was actually a flow of trade between the different groups, and it managed to create 4 fields of battle instead of just 1 5-system network of content. And I think that really helped make this event more successful than it would have been otherwise. Because asking people to just kind of condense into this one area in order to do these sites with these nicer ships, like only Snuff would be able to do it, right? But because there's these 4 isolated places to do it, relatively isolated ways to do it, people were able to find opportunities to do it without like somebody completely apexing it, right? So I think that this was really successful. But again, this was another one that was really short. It was depressingly short, honestly. Like just when people started to figure out how these things work and how good they were, like things like the keys and where the keys came from and when to put the keys in the boxes in order to get the officer mods and all that sort of stuff. Like, by the time all that stuff was largely figured out by the player base, boom, it was already over. Now, I can definitely see by CCP their reasoning to want to do this kind of thing. Like, once a problem is solved, like, you don't want a problem to exist out in space already solved for long enough, because that's when people really start exploiting it. So keeping it shook up makes it so that nobody can really, like, maximize it as much. But it does mean that very few people actually got to participate in it. It also meant that they introduced a whole bunch of new drifter officer mods that could only be gotten through this method. So now those are incredibly valuable, because thus so far there have been no new way to get them. September 17th, we get the beginning of the CSM campaign. The CSM campaigns this year was really short and kind of out of phase of when it normally is done. I don't know what else to say about the CSM right now, or the CSM campaign. I guess, what is your guys' thoughts on this year's CSM campaign season process? Did we get the CSM that we wanted or deserved? I feel like there was some pretty decent choices. There were some pretty decent people that got on the CSM this year, but there was at least a couple people that I was really disappointed didn't get on the CSM this year. But I guess that's the way it works. Then on the 18th of September, which, remember, like October, November, we're now a month or two away from the deadline, right? Everybody has to transfer their sovereignty over before November, according to the previous one. So here this says they made some adjustments to make it easier to transition. And so people were complaining because the mining sites sucked. There were little pebbles of rocks. They didn't last very long. And I was thinking that, like, oh, well, this is fine, because it's kind of like normal sites where it's like you run a bunch of anomalies and you get an escalation, and that escalation's the big cool thing that you maybe bring your friends to, right? But then it turned out that the escalations were incredibly rare and also lackluster. So this required fixing and help, and so they've iterated on it a couple times, tweaking the mining sites, tweaking the combat sites, tweaking the cost of skyhooks, etc. They tweaked capital ships. So it used to be that, like, the need for things like wormhole materials and other specialty materials was kind of across the production chain of capitals. But now they've actually limited the specialty material to only a couple of items in the capital build process. So people with access with only, like, basic materials can still produce quite a bit of the process of capital ships. And at the same time, they also tweaked a bunch of stuff to make Noxium worth more and Isogen worth less, because Isogen was a runaway value up until that point. And people can now post mobile observatories in Pochfin, which this change was apparently not enough, because recently they've changed it so now basically every system in Pochfin automatically has a mobile observatory in the form of the DAS liminality locus, but you also can deploy your own observatories. Also, they added in the new pirate officers. This is probably one of the ones that have been pretty low-key this year, but a big deal. So we've talked about officer ratting before and how to do it successfully, but like in nullsec, you have officers, which are worth like several billion ISK each, but you'll be lucky if you find one or two a month of like pretty constant farming. In lowsec, the concept of officer spawns was kind of replaced by clone soldiers that are used for getting dog tags to help people get their security status fixed, and Mortis Legion ships, which give you Mortis Legion BPCs. Now, interestingly enough, with Havoc, they introduced the net resonators that replaced the old gas and hacking doodads required for the different Empire ships, for the pirate ships. So now each pirate ship has their own resonator that can be purchased from their LP store, which made Mortis Legion ships go from kind of expensive to build to an extreme challenge to build, because Mortis Legion LP is really hard to get compared to the BPCs. So now there's a lot more BPCs for Mortis Legion than there are the resonators to be able to build them. But I digress. In order to continue to kind of liven up the belts, they actually added frigate officers to high-sec belts and low-sec or cruiser officers to low-sec belts. And I've been seeing like quite a bit, like people are finding them every once in a while, and it's like their birthday, right? Like the thing is that in nullsec, a lot of officer rats are found by people dedicatedly hunting for officers because they're the ones that are warping to all the belts. But in high sec, people are warping to belts all the time. There's all kinds of different reasons to do stuff. So these officers just kind of pop up and get found. And so it's just kind of an exciting thing. Another, like a thing that could happen to you while you're roaming around just doing stuff. That's pretty cool. Then, so let's see. The Siege of Zarzak started on the 9th and ended on the 24th. So 15 days. You had 2 weeks to do the Siege of Zarzak, and then it was over. Which again, I was kind of disappointed because it takes a lot of coordination and effort to be able to get a group of 10 people that's willing to go into low-sec or null-sec to run these sites. So the fact that it was gone in a flash made it so that a lot of people just didn't have an opportunity to do it, which is sad. $500 ships and well over 100 billion ISK has been lost to Tyrannos Strategos. And they've dropped over 700 modules. That's actually kind of wild that more modules were dropped than ships destroyed. And 3,000 Horizon breach engines. So only one out of every 6 sites involved a ship being lost, on average. Then on the 25th, this is when we get the fix to skyhooks. Skyhook raiding is taken off the table. It used to go, it used to be that you could raid whenever you want, and now the raid is what is it? It's a 2-hour. What is the actual window time? Do they? Oh, they don't even say it in here, do they? It's like a 1 hour every 3 days, right? It's 1 hour every 3 days. So the chances of any given skyhook being vulnerable is extraordinarily low. So the idea of like randomly going into nullsec through a filament and just raiding whatever skyhook happens to be there. I knew several people in wormholes that were really into that. I knew some people that were into doing it with filaments. This change killed it for all of them. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, this is a compromise. They wanted conflict drivers and they wanted new opportunities for people. But the problem is that the tying the conflict drivers with those new opportunities for people became a have to do for players, became a reason to be bitter about the skyhooks instead of embrace the skyhooks, to the point where a lot of people just didn't even drop them. It's free fucking money. And they still didn't drop them on ice and lava planets because they didn't want to bother with anybody trying to raid it, right? Even though they'll still get it when it isn't raided, they didn't even want to bother. So this did increase a lot the amount of people willing to use it. Also, this was a lot closer to the forced transition period. But, I think that as much as I don't like this change, as much as I would have liked it to continue to be the way it was, and as much as I still think that the 3-day period is incredibly egregious and could be like, it could be 1 hour a day and maybe be fine. I've come to understand that it's like Equinox was supposed to be a nullsec expansion first and foremost. So let's start with them being happy and then work from there, right? And I'm not saying that this makes them happy, but at least makes them more embrace the idea of skyhooks. And I think it was overall successful in doing that with this change, as much as it sucked for everybody who wasn't in nullsec. Then the Crimson Harvest happened in October. The Crimson Harvest was the same as it was in previous years. But, you know, it's a very popular event. I think, actually, one of the things I thought was really interesting about this, they actually did change what areas of space was the specialty thing, but not, like, significantly. They just changed it to, like, a different constellation. But, yeah. The Crimson Harvest is one of the few remaining annual events, along with the Winter Festival. Skyhook improvements are now live. And that's right. So they originally said that the changeover would be mandatory in November. But then they announced that the changeover was going to happen on the 29th of October. And if I remember correctly, they had to put in some sort of forgiveness because of that. I can't remember exactly what it was. Can anybody remember what it was that was put in? Oh, yeah, this is them trying to explain how it's totally okay that all of the skyhooks are set on the same timer starting out, because they'll change to different days over time, which is technically true, but it made the first couple of weeks really wonky. There was 2 days where literally no skyhook in the entirety of New Eden was vulnerable. Yeah, I can't remember what it was that they did. Was that what it was? Because I know that they did do that. Old upgrades and existing TCUs have had their reprocessing rates adjusted so that you get back the full bill of materials upon reprocessing them. The building process will be paused if your system cannot... Blah, blah, blah. Wait. Oh, there's a whole thing about it. Hold on. Where was it? There's rigs. Oh, when will the grace period for removing rigs end? So I don't think that that was it. There was something else. Did I grab it? Man, I don't remember now. Maybe it was the rig thing. I remember they had to do something. And at first I was like, grr, why are they letting them do this? And then somebody pointed out to me, because they were given a different deadline and then they moved up the deadline. So like if you had calculated, oh, was it the manufacturing thing? The building process will be paused if your system cannot physically involve. Man. Yeah, the game. This is what I think it was. Yes, this was it. This is what it was. If you started building a super capital in a system, and then that system became ineligible to build a super capital by this change, the GMs would reimburse you the entire bill of materials. And I was like, what the hell, man? What happened to harden the fuck up? What happened to making a mistake? And then people were like, pointed out to me, like, there were super capitals that were in build that they put in build knowing that the changeover was in November. so since the changeover was happening in October 29th, they're going to catch people with their pants down, and that's why they did this. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I get that now. Then, of course, Revenant comes. Revenant, the most... If Equinox is one of the most controversial expansions that we've had in the last... Well, since the return of expansions, Revenant is the most... What the hell was that expansion that we have had since we've gotten expansions back? Like, Viridian was very much like a maintenance expansion. It didn't have anything like truly sexy a part of it. But Revenant feels weird, right? Like, because Revenant is selling us on this whole like deathless versus drifter stuff. But so far, like, the answers of where that's going hasn't come up yet. Like, we're just barely touching the first steps of this whole thing. So, you know, they say strike at the heart of darkness, but we don't even know what this heart of darkness is yet. Yeah, strike at the heart of darkness, November 12th. But here, I'll play it real quick.
Victory comes at a cost. A momentary pause while all regroup. But now, I have the lock. Bring me the key. And united, we will strike at the heart of darkness.
So, the thing about this is, like, because breacher pods technically attack the heart of the ship. No. This is, I mean, they've got to be talking about the war between the Deathless and the Drifters. So, the thing about Revenant expansion is that the feature set is really cool, right? Like, mercenary dens are pretty cool. Although, oddly enough, I feel like they still super favor... I think that actually let me take that back. Honestly, mercenary dens are the biggest disappointment for me of this entire year, right? Because when Skyhooks first got changed to make it so that, you know, it was very nullsec focused and we couldn't rate it as easily, and then they came out with mercenary dens, I was like, this is it. This is the thing, right? I go and I put down the mercenary den and it infects the thing and I collect stuff off of it and it'll be great. And I've tried it a couple times and it is kind of fun, but like, the fact that the site only spawns every 3 days and, you know, there's no real penalty for people to put it on their own thing. It's basically made it so that every temperate world Skyhook has a mercenary den that's just by the owners of the system on it. So this idea of like coming in and raiding it with that, like infecting a system, kind of went into the wayside, and it's more like a thing for nullsecers to do in their own system for more activities, which is fine. I mean, that's a good thing too. But I feel like in a lot of ways, Revenant had really, really cool features. You know, the new Deathless ships, the mercenary dens, the infomorphs, a lot of stuff is really, really cool. And has this really, really like compelling story. We're finally going to find out who the Deathless is. And we're bringing back the Drifters. And holy shit, we're going to go into a big war between the Deathless and the Drifters. And yet, so far, those two facts seem very disconnected, right? Like, they're only very loosely tied together. And I think that that's because that this is like a transition point for the story. This is more of a signpost that we're turning a corner and that this is the direction that we're going to go on for the foreseeable future. This war with the Drifters isn't what the Revenant expansion is about. It's what the next probably couple years is going to be about. It's just Revenant opens the door for that, right? So with that in mind, we get the Deathless ships, including the new Breacher pods. I think that we haven't fully understood the impact of these things yet, simply because they're so hard to collect still, because they require so many infomorphs, and because only Nullsec can really farm the infomorphs, and the infomorphs have to come to Zarzak in order to be turned in. All of these things and a few more have made it so that these ships are still incredibly difficult to get your hands on. They are, even the Destroyer is still over 1 billion ISK a pop, as we looked at just the other day. But these ships are super cool. Actually, hold on a second. I want to show you guys something, because I've showed it before, but I think now's a good time to show it again. Let me pull up my studio. I have an unlisted video. I offered to put it up for people, but then nobody told me that they wanted it, so I didn't. I'll give you guys another shot at it. How about that? Where is it? Dutch Gunner was kind enough to let me play around with his ship. Wait. Where is it? Hold on. God damn it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Oh, never mind. I gave it a thumbnail, even though I didn't make it live. Oh, it's members only. Whatever. Let me turn down the in-game sound so you'll just hear it. All right. Here is the animation. Would you think Dens would be better if it handled by corpse and spawned more sites to run and try to control the anarchy? I think that the sites should spawn like within the first hour and maybe every few hours, and maybe build up, and a few of them need to be built up in order for it to start corrupting. Because like, so I was able to put down a skyhook and it lasted for about somewhere between 8 hours to 3 days, depending on where it was. And I just, like, as a person who's, like, they said that these are for people coming in from the outside too, but they just don't work for somebody coming in from the outside, you know? So you can see everything kind of folds in. There's a lot of moving pieces. It shakes as it starts to land. This crank here spins to move it up and down. So you can see it tremoring on the front end. And then this wheel spins to move it up. Very... Oh, I guess down. Never mind. Moves it down. Very, mechanical. Very, physical ship. Here you can see the tremoring a little bit better. Each of the individual flaps kind of tremor on their own. And then, so here's the audio effects. And so I have the audio effects turned up, but... So yeah, you're hearing like the alarm on inside and fighting inside. What's funny is I don't think you can hear it in this one, but we were listening to it a little bit longer while we were doing this test, and you can very clearly hear, "Oh fuck!" It's one of the things that gets yelled by people inside as they're fighting. It's really funny. And then when it's in armor, explosions start happening. I have. Yeah, this is like really, really cool. Unfortunately, I don't think it's gotten enough attention. So you can see that my shields get built up a little bit, but then as they go down, because so I've now shut off my shield booster again, so I'm letting it eat away at my health again. I really didn't want to lose my squall. But as soon as it hits armor again, boom, explosions happen. That's right, like the stream. If you like breacher pods, like the stream. No. And let me know if you want me to release this video to everybody. Spoiler, I didn't die. There you go. No. Okay. That's enough of that. There we go. Then mercenary dens, we've been talking about those. Again, they're just in my opinion, they've just become another cool resource for nullsecers, right? Like skyhooks end up being almost like a strategic level asset, whereas the mercenary dens are more of an individual level asset. Enhanced corporation projects, we talked about this earlier. This is when we got some more upgrades to corporation projects and fixing some of the goals, including, I think, the ship replacement program. This is also when we got the Skinner, the ability to sell skins to your corporation for Evermarks, as well as getting 2 patterns to use on Skinner, which doesn't sound like a huge enhancement, but it really, really is. It makes a big difference to have 2 different patterns to use. Typical Capsuleer ship, explosions going off, about to blow up, and no escape pods seen for the crew. I've always suspected that like things like escape pods, like our cameras, because what we're experiencing is a virtual experience created by a bunch of cameras that are around our ship to reconstruct space around us. So I've always like argued that civilian vehicles, in order to protect them from us, like just don't show up on our cameras. That might be cope. And then this is when we got the new ship windows, which the show info window, which some people have complained about, but I think that overall these have been pretty good. And a lot of the complaints that I've seen about it have either been very much just a meh, change is bad, meh, or like just wrong. Like there's somebody who put it in a compact mode and then stretched it super wide and then bitched about how stretched everything looked. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, you put it in a mode that it wasn't designed for, and it's compact mode, and then you stretched it out. Like it's going to fill up the area, and it only has the bars to fill it up with. That is cope. Probably. They're definitely hidden, or capsuleers would pop them. Yes. Yeah. Oh no, they are definitely mentioned in the lore for sure. And then now we can also finish our Evermarks with our air goals with Evermarks, and we get the new. So we got the new Vanguard event, which was, oh shit, what was this one called? I don't remember what the last one was called. Anyone remember? Was it Groundbreak? It was Groundbreak, wasn't it? Yeah, Groundbreak. So the Groundbreak event basically took, so like for the first few months from October to June, we had one map, and that map was known as Aftermath or Carrion, because it was the wreckage of a bowhead that was destroyed, right? And then in June, when they came out with the big update, the Solstice update, they came out with the Solstice map, which was like this jungle-ish, swampy region that is tied to a skyhook, right? Like the ground component of the skyhook connection. So in Groundbreak, what they did was they allowed both of those maps to be available and two different versions of each of those maps. There was a night and day version of Carrion, and there was a stormy, there's a monsoon and a normal version of Solstice. And they also split up the tasks. So originally you were given missions, and you could choose from one of the missions that like were for the two different teams. And depending on which team you did missions for, you either got suppression or corruption for the insurgencies that were tied to it. Because like Vanguard has been tied to insurgencies since day one, by the way. For those of you who are like, oh, I can't wait till they try it into EVE Online. It is. But in Groundbreak, they actually split these two functions into two different things, right? You went to one of those four sites, and there were missions, but they were just for like ISK and rewards. They didn't tie to suppression or corruption at all. But then there was another site that was in the invasion system, and it was a 9v9 capture the points combat site where it was done on Carrion, and there was 3 cannons, and if you're near the cannon, then you capture it for your team. And when it's on your team, it shoots every like 10 seconds or so. It will shoot 3 times at the enemy's MCU in the space, the mobile command center, MCC, flying in space, and do 1% per shot. So basically, every 10 seconds or so, you would do 3% damage to the enemy ship for every cannon that you own. And the first one to take their people down, the enemy down to 0, won. And that was the one that was tied to corruption and suppression. So there was like the 4 places that were for farming, and then there was the 1 place that was more for fighting, if that makes sense. So that worked out pretty well, and it was a pretty long playtest, honestly. They extended it from the 9th December an extra, I think, week or so. Then Prosper with the Deathless. Right. So just before that event, they started doing Trustbreaker arrays, which were new sites that spawned in the insurgency home systems, right? In the FOB system. And these were actually basically a copy paste of the emergency aid site from HiSec, replacing the rats with like drifter rats and stuff. The problem here is, once again, it was incredibly short-lived, right? Like this started on the 21st and this started on the 28th. And by the time this started, by the time Groundbreak started, the Trustbreaker sites were almost over. So the Trustbreaker sites only lasted like a week or two also, which ended up being a big problem because like they were honestly a pretty hard challenge. Home fronts are kind of tuned to be that you have to have the right comp and the right gimmick in order to win. And in general, that emergency aid site is succeeded by having 5 Logi ships because it's a 5-man fleet. So you got 5 Logi ships, and then you have enough rep power to overcome the DPS that's coming in. But when we did that in LowSec, I mean, it's in the fob system. There's not only is it in LowSec, but it's in a very contested LowSec system, either at or adjacent to a headquarters, and everybody who's pro-deathless jumps straight into it with the shipcaster. So there's a lot of activity in these sites. Chances are somebody's going to disturb it at some point. Anybody who's in a T1 cruiser or below can get in, right? So, like for instance, we had a bunch of Thrashers come in to disrupt our attempt. Now, I don't have a problem with Thrashers coming in and disrupting my attempt, but it means that we have to also compensate for the Thrashers, right? So, okay, well, how do you do that? Well, we're going to adjust by having a couple of combat ships so we can deal with the Thrasher, and we'll still have 3 Logi. Guess what? That still doesn't work, right? Like, you pretty much have to have the 5 Logi in order to succeed it, but you also need somebody to deal with the threats, the extra threats that come in. But by the time we could actually try to get this figured out, it was already over. So we never actually got to be able to solve the problem. And in the end, they were like, oh, those dastardly capsuleers, they just waited for the key to be made and then let it get blown up. And I was like, we didn't let shit blow up. We tried our best. On November 5th was the end of the Crimson Harvest. And that's it. That's it. I don't even know why I pulled this one up. Oh, the Revenant is here video. We already did that one. We talked about Groundbreak and the changes that was. Revenant updates. Okay, so this is when they added in the MTOs, which are the new sites that spawn with mercenary dens, which is supposed to make infomorphs faster to generate, right? But unfortunately, like I said, if you're an invader, you're not going to be able to hold that mercenary den probably for long enough to increase that efficiency. Like, it's going to take like a week or two or more before you can really start to get your stats up in a meaningful way to be able to increase the amount of infomorph decryption keys that are being spawned. So there's still a very limited bottleneck of where these infomorph come from, which is why we're seeing those deathless ships continue to be so valuable. There were some balance tweaks, including the EOS nerf. Yeah. Nothing too serious. Then I guess this is just trying to remind us what was going on. Yeah, this didn't really reveal much of anything. It's just, this is what's been happening, and this is what's going to happen next. But the going to happen next was the winter event. Yeah. So then, Winter Nexus is here, which is the event that we're doing right now. And I will say that, like, I normally say this is the most lucrative event of the year. Some people have pushed back on that. I think that maybe it's been tuned down from what it was before, but it's still a pretty decent event, especially for the activities that you're doing. My big recommendation for you is if you just want points, just mine ISK and HiSec. Sure, it's not going to get you the most amount of ISK, but it's going to get you your points. You want ISK, then mine in LowSec, or maybe even do the combat sites even in HiSec or LowSec or wherever. But if you just want event points and get through the event to get that 100 plex or whatever at the end, you need to, or like the best way to do it is just mine in HiSec. And then finally, yeah. And then finally, the cherry on the top, the thing we didn't ask for but all wanted this year, we got planetary industry templates. Three cheers for planetary interaction templates. Hip hip hooray. No, big thing, highly requested. I'm glad about it. They also said the site are supposed to have 80 to 50, 100 million ISK in loot, and I've seen times of 36 million in loot. I couldn't tell you. I can't get a mercenary. I can't get an MTO because nobody will let my mercenary den last for 3 years. So, or 3 months rather, 3 days, 3 days. So I don't know. I don't know how much MTOs offer. You have a total of 10 points just because you couldn't get into it. Well, yeah. If you just let it happen in the background for a few hours, you'll get it. You can knock it out. Same reason by Station Firefly. Oh, they did put in the bobs inside of stations. That's pretty cool. Little visual things. Yeah. And that is about it. I was going to cover the lore for the year, but this was already 2.5 hours. So I think if I'm able to come back tomorrow, maybe we'll cover the lore of the year tomorrow. Let me know if you're interested. Okay. I have no idea whether or not this is going to be the last stream of the year. I hope not. My plan is that it's not. I do have other content coming up on the YouTube, so be subscribed on the video. But I think tomorrow, I think the idea of jumping into the lore for the year is a big ask at this point. We'll be here for another 2 hours. The one thing I will say that I noticed about the lore this year, just to go back to kind of what we've been talking about, if you zoom out, we can see how many posts are made per year. Now, granted, it's not the end of the year. We still have another, 12 days or so to the end of the year. But it's also Christmas vacation now. So I don't imagine that there's going to be a shit ton more lore to come out this year. So, but what I noticed is that if you look, unless they post another 3 New Eden news this year, or like within the next 12 days, which would be a big ask, this year has had the lowest number of New Eden news updates since 2012. Which, remember, 2012 was a big time for like the books and like a big shakeup in the making of the lore, because like Drop Bear leaves the company and they kind of go a little bit dormant at that point. So like not since 2012 have we gotten so few New Eden news in a single year. So I don't know what that means for like stuff. We also haven't gotten that many scope articles. It feels like a lot of things have happened because like all of the stuff with the Deathless and the Drifters and all that stuff has happened this year. But ultimately, we've gotten, just by the numbers, less content. I hate how the drug icons changed, but the BPO BPCs didn't. Wait, I thought the drug... What do you mean? You mean the materials for the drugs? Hold on. I don't know if I know how to do this. I have opinions. Yeah, yes, that's true. I don't know what you tried to do there, Uliam, but it got retracted. Never mind. What do you mean by the drug icons changed, but the BPO BPCs didn't? The icons? I know that the reaction materials got changed, right? Like, this is a new icon, right? Which icon got changed, but not the BPC? Lore-wise, Theodicy and the whole lore chain on through with the first novel was not good for Eve. You're definitely... I've heard that argument before. Like the standard blue pill. Well, the standard blue pill looks like this. The BPC looks like that too. Right? It's just this stage that got changed because they all had the same icon before. Yeah, I'm not sure where your problem is with that. This seems pretty logical. Yeah, because these icons were like a generic icon. The Deathless story has components to be good. It's just not executed on well as yet. Man, I am trying really, really hard just between you guys since it's 2.5 hours into a video that probably bored a lot of people. Between me and you, I'm trying not to take it personally because I think, and I've had other people tell me, that it feels like I was right about the Deathless and his origin, but then they were like, "Oh, we can't let Ash be right," and so they had to like change it, and like now he's this SOE guy or SOCT guy, and I'm like, what was so bad about him being the fiend? Cruise fight to the death. No, they canonically have escape pods. They don't always get to them. All right. Well, let me know if I didn't cover anything. What was your favorite part of the year? Let's think about this. I think that overall, I wanted to give like the different aspects of the year, like different grades, but man, especially if you compare it to the previous couple of years, this year definitely feels lackluster, right? They've split a lot of their attention. Like we didn't even cover this, but like this year we went from having one Eve product to 4, right? I mean, I'm not even counting Eve Echoes, but now we have Eve Online, Eve Valkyrie, Eve Galaxy Conquest, and Eve Frontiers. And while they all have different teams and everything, I like CCP is doing a lot of stuff, and it's not all Eve Online. And I don't know. I think that the biggest problem that I have is that the things that they've delivered on this year feel relatively lackluster, especially when you consider like how good Uprising was, how well it identified the exact issues of faction warfare and augmented them to make it incredibly successful. Like that was a genius expansion. And I feel like they've tried to catch that lightning in a bottle again and have just struggled to do so. They've struggled to build off of it. They've struggled to convert it to nullsec. They struggled to bring that victory forward, you know? And I think that the other problem is that narratively, we kind of hit the end of the strain. And now with all of this Deathless stuff, like it's cool, it hints to something in the future, but it doesn't give us any understanding of what that thing is. And it makes a lot of the past stuff kind of confusing. So we're in a really liminal space right now where the things that we've gotten are fairly unfulfilling. And we don't have a clear sign of where we're going from here. And I think that that's the reason why a lot of us Eve players are feeling a general malaise at the end of this year, right? But the one thing that I can say is that the old CCP that doesn't iterate on their projects after they've been put out is gone. And that's good, right? What we have seen is semi-successful stuff being put out with several significant iterations, both to faction warfare, stuff that came out within the last couple of years, to stuff that's coming out right now. Like, this has, I think, been almost a landmark year on CCP adjusting based on player feedback, for better or worse, right? And maybe that's some promise. I want to believe that we're going somewhere. Revenant suggests that we're going somewhere truly exciting. We're on the precipice of the next thing, right? This is the new arc. We're living at the point of transition. Like I said, a liminal space. But we don't know where we're going. And I think that makes us feel like we're not going anywhere sometimes. So once again, I mean, I think that the biggest thing that's held back CCP is their ability to communicate. And of course, I still feel like a big piece of where the answer could be is the lore, because that's the thing that people really engage with. And small hints to the future is something that we can chew on for a long time, right? But I feel like this year was a maintenance year, like a preparation year for the next thing. But it was sold to us as being a monumental year, right? It's the year that nullsec gets fixed. Did nullsec get fixed? Not really. It got the pieces put in, but it certainly doesn't feel finished. It definitely feels halfway put in. I mean, like, even the fact that ADMs still exist, but are not, like, tied to it anymore. Like, there's a lot of bits where it's like, this is clearly partially through the transition, but we've been given no vision of what that actual transition looks like past where we are. So hopefully CCP, if you are listening to this, will take that into advice. So at the beginning of the year, our developer letter was incredibly conservative and didn't promise much, and we got exactly what they promised. Well, actually, we didn't get all of the things, but I think that this year, I hope that the January developer or the high-level letter is going to give us a better understanding as to why we should look forward to the future. Because right now, I'm not sure why we should. So, I'm interested. I'm here for it. And of course, subscribe to my channel, because as soon as they do talk about it, we'll be talking about it on here. But yeah, I think that's my takeaway from it. Like, it was a solid year for iteration, and it was a pretty lackluster year for improvement. I think that's pretty much what I can go with as far as my final analysis. But let me know if you agree, disagree, thoughts. Am I silly? Am I still a white knight? I don't know, whatever. Let me know in the comments down below. But with all that said, I've been Ashtarothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to even context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for joining me this year of YC126. Hopefully, I will see you again on a stream before YC127. But either way, until next time, I will see you in space. Oh, wait. Before I go, bonus, end of year check-in. Okay, my cat and my dog are sleeping right now, but I'm gonna go get the guinea pigs. Here they are. Of course, we got Midnight, the albino, and Mini Guinea. They are precious, and we love them. And remember, they have a special condition, which means they not only need the normal food and drink and everything, but they also require your likes, comments, and subscriptions for survival. And they're looking a little skinny recently. So please, please, I beg you, for the guinea pigs, like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time, I'll see you in space.